Now let's explore how you can use the visual editor to create pages as well as microservices. The project editor has a navbar that includes a GramX icon, which takes you back to the list of projects. You can come back to the editor page by clicking on Edit, and you'll see that we are currently under the classification project. And you can also choose to go instead to the component editor or the digital twin layout editor. Let's go through the rest of the page. On the left half are a set of capabilities that include a selection of pages, the ability to deploy, and a few others like analytics and data that are not yet in production. You can also switch to a code editor. The code editor lets you write code directly, and you can switch back by selecting the project name. Your time will mostly be spent in the pages section or in the editor section when building the application. The pages section lets you build an application by dragging and dropping. The editor section lets you build an application by coding. In pages, there are three things that you can configure. The first is UI components, which you can drag and drop into pages. The second are backend microservices, which you can add to the microservices section. And finally, there are a set of applications, which are pre-built front-end and back-end combinations that you can embed into your own applications, which will be coming up soon. On the right-hand side is the page where on the right-hand side is a section where I can actually edit the page contents. So I can choose to either edit pages or microservices. Pages are where we drag and drop UI components. Microservices are what get created when we add a microservice. For now, let's start with adding some contents to a page. We already have a page, index.html. That's the home page. That is always available when we start the app, and that's what we saw a short while ago. So if I click on launching the app, this page that you see is index.html. Let's select that page, and you see that the contents of the page is what we have here. Let's get rid of this learn more button and we'll replace it with our own content. So I'm going to select that and click on the delete button. Now save it and let's launch the app again. We still have this. Now let me click on the save icon and it says file saved successfully. Now let me launch the app and that shows me the page without the icon. Great. Next, what we'll do is add a 2-column section right below. Let's add it maybe out here. Yeah, one below, 2 columns that are one below the other. Now let me add a 2-column section out here. And you see these are right below the other, not quite like this, but that's because of the resolution. These are responsive. So as I zoom out, they end up being horizontal. But when I zoom in, if the content is too small, it will reorient itself to a vertical layout. Now within this, I'm going to add some content. We'll start by adding an image to each of these sites. So let's click on image. No, let's do this again. We'll start by adding an image to both sections. So let's drag and drop an image here. So we can either upload an image from the local file system or we can type the path to a specific image. So I'm going to go to Pixabay and find an image. So let's take the first image here, copy the image address, and let's add that out here. That allows me to add this image. And this is clearly too large, so we want to reduce the size. Now that can be done by changing the properties of the image on the right hand side. Let me zoom out a bit so you can see a bit more of the properties. So there are general properties, there are layout properties and so on. And one of the properties in layout is the width. So let's reduce that to maybe 500 pixels. That's one way of reducing the size. You could also just increase the size, reduce the width, squash it in any way you want. Now, this obviously is not such a great idea. So let's get this back to auto and change the overall dimensions like this. so that we have a width of 480 and a height of 320. Let's add another image to the right hand side. Let's drag and drop the image here, and this could be a cello whose image address we copy, paste it out here, add the image, select the image to insert it, and that gives us something whose width we can again set to the same as what we had earlier, 480. Now, this page, let's save it. And now that it's been saved successfully, let's launch the page. And we have the same two images that are stored in a responsive set of containers. This approach allows us to create a container in which you can drag and drop components. And these can be simple components and they can be interactive components, as well as microservices, which we're going to cover in another section. Let's create a microservice. What we'll do is collapse the pages section and expand the microservices sections to see what are the existing microservices. We already have something called file handler, and what that does is serves existing files. In this case, it serves a file called index.html. We can add our own microservices. There's a long list here, but I'll start with one of the top ones, comic handler. All that comic handler needs is an endpoint, and with that, it'll be able to serve specific kinds of pre-created comics. So we'll create one at / let's say comic page and submit. Now this has been added at / comic page. Let's preview the URL, and by default, there is a comic character here. We are able to change the properties of this character by adding parameters, like let's say name equals Ethan and emotion equals sad, with a sad emotion or an angry emotion. And you can add a pose to that. Let's say pose equals normal. The list of all possible combinations are available on grammarly.com /comicgen/v1, where you can choose from any of the characters like Ethan, who we saw, and a series of emotions and poses that are available as part of this character set. The same parameters that are available here will be available through this microservice as well, and you can embed this on your page. That's what a microservice does. It allows us to take inputs from the user as part of the URL query parameters and return a response based on those inputs. In other words, it's like writing a function for web pages.